Okay, this is a quick tutorial on basics of Git. First things first, you want to be in a terminal. Let's go ahead into a repository and make sure we have something that can actually serve as a Git repo. First and foremost, you can say git status in order to check the status of your Git repository, and that tells you if you have anything to commit, if you've actually made any changes, and whatever the status of the tree is. One thing to first note about Git is that Git is a decentralized thing. So whatever you do locally does not actually happen on GitHub. GitHub is a service which hosts an instance of Git and basically replicates whatever changes you made when you push things out to what we call the remote. So we think of GitHub as the remote, and our local here is what we're working with locally on our files tree. So let's go ahead and make a file real quick. We'll say vim test file. .txt. It can be any text file, and this is a text file, which is new and needs to be tracked with my repository. Let's just assume that this is something we care about, so we'll save it. And now if we go ahead and check our Git status, you'll see that we have one untracked file. So in order to do that, we have to actually stage a file. And what that means, it's very much similar to when you go onto a stage and you're like a prop guy behind the curtains. If they're trying to switch the scene, you put like the giant ferret statue or whatever is needed for the scene, you put it behind the curtain. That's what you call staging a file. So you're putting all the files that you want to be presented, right, or committed in the case of the actual Git. So in this case, it's test file. So we'll go ahead and add that. And notice if we do a git status again, you will see that we have a new file. It's a staged file, right? Now let's say we want another one. It doesn't mean that we can only add one file, right? Let's go ahead and say, let's make another one. Let's say test another file .txt. Right, and then let's give it some content. So let's say content, and let's append it to that another file. So now if we look at that another file, it actually has something inside of it. If we do another git status, you'll see that there is another file and it's unstaged. Notice that we're not showing that test file in the red because it's already like staged. We already know that it's going to be good to go there. So from this perspective, we can also do a git diff in order to, oh yeah, there is no git diff because we don't have this file there before. You can do git diff in order to check the differences between the original and the appended file or the appended changes. We'll go ahead and see an example of that in a second. So now that you have all of that, let's go ahead and just add it. Now notice how I use git add dot, right? This refers to, the dot is a shortcut to the current folder that you're in. So everything within this folder and everything recursively down the tree will be added to there. But you can just as easily just actually specify a file, and if you do git status, you'll notice that we have two files that are staged. Now that we know that we want both of these files to be committed, let's go ahead and make a commit message so that we're committing this code. Or these files. This is the good stuff that we need, and we want to like make sure that it goes to, or we commit it to the changelog. Just don't worry about it, right? I'm trying to do this for beginners. There's a lot of like technical shit that's happening underneath the hood, but don't worry about that. So we'll go ahead and say git commit -m. I added 2 necessary files. Right? Here is where you can say what pertains to whatever you've done. So in this case, I don't really have anything that's significant here, but let's say that you added some sort of functionality to your code or whatever it is. You say specifically what it, give it a nice message so that, other devs can see it and be like, oh, hey, he added this feature, or hey, he added this blah, 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 right? So now that we've committed it, you'll see that it even gives you like the file permissions, 644 for both of them, and it's creating them. And at this point, you've committed it to your local instance, right? Now, what you can do is say git push origin head. And what this does is that we're going to push our current version of the repository to the remote and the current up to the current comment that we have. Head refers to the current comment that's available. So we go ahead and do that, and notice that it gets pushed out there. So those are really the commands that you're going to need, and all you'll pretty much need to do. Now let's go ahead and say that we check out these two files, another file and test file, right? Now let's say that I decide to add another line. We'll just call it more content, right? So I've saved this, and oops, and you know, whatever, this is another line to this file, right? Who cares what's actually in it, right? And at this point, we can do a git diff. And what you'll notice is that this will show the differences between the last committed code that you've had and the current one. Notice we haven't staged anything or added anything. We are simply looking at the differences between the previous instance of this file and whatever. So that's how you can see that it's there. Let's say that we went ahead and checked these files out, and let's just pretend that I deleted this original one, right? And then we'll say we delete like 4 words here, right? This text doesn't make sense. But now if you do a git diff, you'll see that it like legitimately checks to see. It's like, okay, we removed content and we added more content. We removed this line and then we added this line instead. So it won't do anything outside of the line context, right? So that's pretty much how git diff works, and you'll do that in order to see if your changes were made. But let's go ahead and add these things, and if we say git status, you'll see that, okay, those things have been modified, and those are the things that we're trying to push out, or we're trying to commit. We'll say git commit, and we say I changed the 2 lines that were necessary. Terrible thing, but at this point this is just fake. I'm just making this up for the sake of example. And then we once again can push origin head in order to make those changes propagate. Now let's say that, you know, it's like, okay, this is fine and dandy, David, this is all a brand new repository. Oh, sorry, this is all in an existing repository. What if I have a existing one, right? So let's go ahead to GitHub and let's create one. So let's say you're starting a new project. We're not going to have a template. We'll call it test repository tutorial. You know, whatever. Let's give it a name, give it a good description. This is a test of Git. All right. We'll keep it public, you know. Usually if you have some sensitive stuff in there, you don't want to have sensitive crap in there. Just keep it private. Either way, honestly, don't do super private stuff on third-party services. If you have some sensitive stuff, keep that separate. But that's for another side. This is for beginner. This is for first Dan, okay? We'll add a README. Why not? The git, git ignore template. We'll put none, right? Let's go ahead and create that repository. So. Okay, that's not what I wanted. I did not want the README. Okay, let's just make a completely empty one. Okay, we'll just say test. We'll just say test. Okay, just don't worry about that. Don't worry about that one. Okay, we're not going to add anything. We'll just say create the repository, right? So now you're presented with a situation like this, right? So you want to first begin it and actually pull this down and create a new repository. But what you can do is use a command called git init. It tells you exactly what you need to do in order to make this stuff work. So let's go ahead and make a directory, and we'll call it the same. Well, we called it test, so we'll call it test. And if we go into test, we can go ahead and create a README file, and that's what this command here does. That's what they're just doing. So we have now a file. We'll say git init in order to create a new repository. Notice it was an empty directory before, but if I do an ls/lah, we have a .git folder here, and this is how you know something is a Git repository. I'm recording a video real quick. I got you. Thank you for the raid, homie. All right, so I'll get to you in a second, I promise. So we'll go ahead and add that file, and from this point we have just like before, a added new file, so that you can check the status of it, right? We'll go ahead and give it a comment, and we'll just say initial comment, just to give it some sort of message, and from there on you can go ahead and define a branch that it will use. Technically you can go ahead and not care. Usually it's master, but I know people think that's racist for some reason, and they make you use main these days on these platforms. That's not like anything enforced. But yeah, you can go ahead and now at this point, this is the important piece. You're adding a remote, and the remote is GitHub. It's basically the instance of your repository remotely that you want to synchronize with whatever changes you've made locally. Because right now, this is a fresh created repository. It only exists here and only here in this folder and on my computer. So we'll go ahead and add that remote, and now that means that it's tracking to the instance that we've made on GitHub. And let's go ahead and push it to the main over here. And as you can see, it made a new branch. It's pretty happy. And notice how it's called origin/main. That's basically the remote. That's the GitHub. That's GitHub, right? I'm using a little bit of fake terminology, but because this is for beginners, don't worry about it. Basically, the stuff is out there. And if I were to go ahead and refresh this page, you will see that yes, in fact, the file that we made is there and the README is there. And now you can use it as normal, as we did before. Touch test.txt. Go ahead, get status, and git add. Let's add that, and for shortcut we'll just do the current directory, so all the files that we made are there, so you can just have that quick and easy to go. And git commit -m test commit, just to show that it's happening. Notice it's added. Git push origin head, right? And now that file is there. But also, if you go ahead and check the git branch, it'll show you what branch that you're on, right? Now let's say that we want to do stuff in a different one. Git checkout -b to select which branch. This is the shortcut. There's a way to do it with git branch, but this is, I just never use that, so fuck that. Git checkout -b, another branch. Right? Let's go ahead and do that. You check git branch and notice you are on a different branch. Let's go ahead and touch another test. Just tet.txt, who cares, right? And we have another file. We'll say git add and git commit, test commit on new branch, and then git push origin head. And notice we have a new branch, and head is another branch. That means the head is the current branch that we're pointing at. So now if you go over here, you'll see it's like, holy shit, there's another one. You can push it. You can make a pull request, right? But you'll notice now there's two of them. So if I go here, whoa, it's another thing of another instance of your repository. And it's, or not your repository, but it's another instance of the main branch, but with some other files. So now when you go and you have to work with other people, you can create a test pull request and be like, this is my sick code, and get people to review it. You can add reviewers here and labels and all that stuff. It shows you what you've added. I've added an empty file. This is a very meaningless pull request. You create a pull request, right? And now people can look at this, right? And they can see if your code actually merges into there. You'll see how many lines differences, plus or minus 0 lines of code, hence a very useless one. You can assign people to this. I'll assign myself because this is my own repository. People can review your code. If they like it, you can then merge the pull request. Usually you'll have someone else do it, or it depends on the company that you're on, right? We'll say merge, right? Confirm the merge. And notice, and we can delete the branch because now we don't need that. And if you go over here, back to the code, you'll notice that there is no longer that new branch, and the changes that have been made in the other branch have been propagated to the main branch or the branch that you branched off of. A branch is literally what it sounds like. You're branching from a particular branch, and you can remerge back into there. That is the most basic tutorial I can give. Hope that helps. Bye-bye.